the pump prices in the United States of America are increasing, and what this means is that at the moment, the prices of diesel and gasoline are rising. This is a situation that has been brought about because of the continuing situation between the United States and Israel on one side and Iran on the other side. And this is because the current situation is actually affecting or disrupting the export of fuel and oil products. And as you can imagine, the rise of the domestic prices in gasoline and diesel is of course going to be a major headache when it comes to the midterm elections, which are supposed to happen later in November this year. So this could end up being a hot political potato for President Trump and the Republicans. But it is also worth noting that United States at the moment is actually the largest producer of oil and gas in the world. But the reason why it is also being affected by the rising prices of the crude oil in the world is that it is also one of the largest importer of oil and gas products. And this is because what the United States is producing is not enough to actually supply the demand that exists in the United States. So they have to rely on importing petroleum products. And that's where the problem comes in, because at the moment, there is a big problem when it comes to transportation and shipping of crude oil or oil and gas resources from the Gulf states. This is because Iran has almost technically blocked any movement of oil and gas cargo through the Strait of Hormuz, which, if you do not know, that area actually helps move about 20% of the global oil and gas resources. So when there is a disruption to the flow of cargo through that strait, then it is going to affect the supply of oil and gas in the market. And from basic economics, when you have high demand of a product or a service and you have less supply of it, it almost leads to an increase in prices. But of course, oil and gas is a very interesting kind of an industry, because at the moment there are conversations going on, especially among the G7 countries, in trying to figure out how they can be able to balance the supply and demand to avoid the crude oil prices skyrocketing to probably what has been projected to $150 per barrel or even $200 per barrel. If this is the first time that you and I are meeting, I am Joe, and on this YouTube channel, I talk about oil and gas and the business of oil and gas, and I would really appreciate it if you would consider subscribing to this YouTube channel. Many consumers in America are already complaining because of the high cost of gasoline and diesel. And this is a situation that is even getting worse or is being compounded because of the rising inflation, which is affecting the American consumer, meaning that the amount of money that they are making is not necessarily able to meet some of the demands that they have or to meet the needs that they have at a consumer level or at a household level. And so when you have this particular situation escalating, it is making life a little bit more difficult for the Americans. And you can feel it, because that's why most of them are complaining that this situation is probably not sustainable in the long term. And some of the most hit people in the United States are the people who live in the Midwest and also those who live in the South, because they seem to have been the ones who have seen the highest increase of gasoline and diesel prices since the situation with Iran started. Therefore, they're actually hoping that this issue can actually be de-escalated and probably the prices can get a little bit lower to ensure that they can probably have an opportunity to save more money and stop spending most of their money on actually fueling their cars. When it comes to the American economy, oil and gas plays a very important role. And this is something that even happens across the world. The role of oil and gas cannot actually be understated. And when you have global oil and gas prices going up, for most people, this is going to affect them directly or indirectly. And I think that's the effect that the US consumers are feeling at the moment. There is an increase in the global crude oil prices, which is also being transferred to the pump prices when it comes to gasoline and diesel across the United States. And even if the United States is still one of the largest producers of oil and gas in the world, the fact that they still continue importing to meet their domestic demand means that any disruption when it comes to the movement of oil and gas across the world is going to affect them. And of course, at this particular moment, there has not been any words from the US administration that they would actually be able to tap into the strategic petroleum reserves to kind of balance issues within the country. And when you consider also the issue of inflation, this might end up being one of a very difficult period for most consumers in America. As a consumer of fuel products in the United States, there are measures or steps that you can take to be able to reduce your fuel expenses every month. And this is important for you to actually do, and you need to be able to understand it because you do not want the increase in fuel prices to actually disturb or disorient your monthly budget. Whether that's your personal budget or whether that's your household budget, you do not want this extra expense to actually end up creating a problem when it comes to your finances. And this is the unfortunate part about the increase in fuel prices, that it is going to affect your finances and it is going to affect your monthly budget. And it is not actually a very fun thing. It's not a good thing because if you are actually under pressure when it comes to your personal finances, then you do not want this extra expense being added into your monthly expenses. And there are ways in which you can be able to mitigate this or to look into this issue. And the obvious step that people take is to try to reduce this expense by actually reducing the amount of movement that they are able to do, which in essence is trying to reduce, the transport expense in your monthly budget. And this sounds obvious and it actually sounds easy on paper, but it might not be applicable in your current situation because you might be involved either in a job or you're doing business where you cannot be able to reduce the transport, where you cannot be able to reduce the number of trips that you take, or you cannot be able to reduce the amount of commuting that you take. So this might not actually be a solution to actually very many Americans. And one other area that you can probably start thinking about is not reducing your expenses. It's trying to figure out how you can also increase your income. And there are actually very many ways in which you can be able to actually increase your monthly income. And without going into much details, the one thing that I would want you to think about is how you can be able to leverage the power of the internet, the power of connectivity, the power of the fact that there is internet and you can access a global market to be able to turn what you know, to be able to turn your knowledge, your expertise, your skills, your experiences into an income generating online business. This is something that you can be able to do to actually increase your income and offset the income that you generate with the expense that you're incurring due to current increase in oil prices as well as due to inflation. Now, I am not trying to say that this is going to be easy. I'm just throwing this idea out there. I'm throwing this idea at you so that you can possibly be thinking about it, because if crude oil prices and fuel prices can go up today, it also means that they can go up tomorrow, they can go up next month, they can go up later in the year, they can even go up again next year. And given the cyclical nature of the oil and gas industry, at least we know that is going to happen. And while maybe you are not prepared during this particular situation, it might make more sense now to start planning for the next time when fuel prices go up so that you are not caught off guard. This is going to be it from me on this particular video. and I hope that you have enjoyed this conversation. Subscribe to this YouTube channel if you have not, and I'm going to see you in my next video.